It's honestly incredible how long people have been following the Game of Thrones story. I started reading the books after binging the first 2 seasons of the TV show. I finished all of them, and then I had the show pass me up again for the final few seasons. And of course, we're all still waiting for the Winds of Winter after the TV show left us wanting a little bit more, to say the least. So, while we wait for the next book, let's go down the Game of Thrones Iceberg. We'll mix in a few perspectives from the show and from the book, and look at some interesting pieces of lore, mysteries, and predictions for the series. But first, if you've seen a couple of my videos and haven't subscribed yet, please consider clicking that button, and I promise to bring you more lore, icebergs, and everything in between. With that, this is the Game of Thrones Iceberg explained. Level 1. The Doom. Beneath the churning waters of the smoking sea, shrouded in a veil of sulphurous mists and haunting silence, lies Valyria, a city whose ashes whisper tales of a vanished empire. The Doom, as it's ominously called, marks the cataclysmic event that swallowed this once magnificent civilization whole, leaving a void in history and igniting a mystery that has captivated fans of Game of Thrones for a long time. In fact, of all the mysteries in the Game of Thrones universe, to me, the Doom is one of the most interesting. It clearly hints at a more magical history within the universe, but at the same time, some will argue that it was likely a natural event, like an earthquake or a volcano that sunk Valyria, furthering a common theme in Game of Thrones of natural versus supernatural that we'll talk about a lot more in other topics. So what are the theories around Valyria's demise? Well, the most common one has to do with the 14 Flames, which were 14 volcanoes around the Valyrian Peninsula. The theory is that essentially some kind of super eruption mega-earthquake buried Valyria underneath the smoking sea. This is, again, one of the more natural solutions that people have to these conundrums that exist in the Game of Thrones universe. On the opposite end of the spectrum, though, are the supernatural explanations. Among the leading theories, some point to Valyria's hubris and insatiable thirst for power. I mean, if you had conquered dragons, would you even think of stopping at that point? Maybe unbridled ambition led them to overstep, meddling with forces beyond their control. Maybe, as they continued to experiment with powerful magic, something happened that they couldn't put back in the bottle. And I don't know if we'll ever learn anything more about the Doom. It seems to be a topic that George R.R. Martin steers away from giving definitive answers for, but I do hope that we see some other characters, like Euron Greyjoy, tell us a little bit more about what's going on there. Jon Snow's parents. We're starting this off with some topics that you've probably heard of before and might know a little bit about. Obviously, Jon Snow's parents have been revealed in the show at this point, but it's worth noting that in the books, that hasn't happened yet. In fact, in the books, Jon Snow's still dead. But anyway, back to his parents. So from his introduction, Jon is marked by a subtle aura of shame, setting him apart from the rest of the Starks. Ned Stark's conversations with Jon Snow, as well as his internal monologue, is full of cryptic promises to his sister, Lyanna Stark. Eddard Stark's character also has quite a bit of foreshadowing in it, and you see it in most of his chapters. For example, there's a dream that he has where he sees his sister's grave, and it's got a ring of blue roses around it, which is the exact gift that Rhaegar Targaryen gave at a tournament. Now, at this point, it's worth noting that basically the whole world believes that Rhaegar and Lyanna are the parents of Jon Snow. Even if you're not deep in Game of Thrones lore, you've probably seen R+L=J. It was a pretty common theory that became basically a battle cry for everyone that wanted to see it played out on the TV show. So while we wait for the final answer from George in hopefully the next book, let's move on to a more interesting topic. Tyrion Lannister's parents. Beneath the golden facade of House Lannister, a shadow of mystery lurks. The true parentage of Tyrion Lannister. From his mocking wit to his dwarfism, a stark departure from the Lannister mold, Tyrion has fueled speculation since he first came into the story. Admittedly, this theory is a little bit far-fetched, but let's go down the rabbit hole anyway. The official lineage paints Tyrion as the son of Tywin Lannister and Joanna Lannister, his siblings being brother and sister twins Jaime and Cersei. Now, his father has open disdain for Tyrion. It borders on hatred, and it's probably because his mother died in childbirth. But what if something else is at play? The most prominent theory posits that Aerys Targaryen, the Mad King, is Tyrion's father. There's whispers of Aerys' assault on Joanna during a visit to King's Landing that fuel this speculation. Tywin's resignation as the Hand of the King shortly after Joanna's death and his perceived bitterness towards the Targaryens adds some further intrigue. This theory would explain Tyrion's affinity for dragons, creatures Targaryens are obviously connected to. Another theory is that while maybe Jaime and Cersei are the children of Tywin and Joanna, maybe Tyrion is a younger sibling conceived on a separate occasion with a different Lannister relative. This would explain Tywin's animosity, born out of shame or a desire to conceal his infidelity. I can't find a whole lot of support behind these theories. The biggest point seems to be Tyrion's obsession with dragons and how they seem to respond to him differently, at least in the TV show. Azor Ahai Reborn. There is a prophecy mentioned somewhat frequently within Game of Thrones. It's the coming of Azor Ahai, the prince that was promised, the champion reborn amidst smoke and salt to vanquish the darkness. This figure becomes a focal point of speculation and debate, leaving viewers grappling with potential candidates and the true meaning of the cryptic pronouncements. Like a few other topics on this list, I think Azor Ahai was a topic that was just a little bit too weird for the showrunners to really include in the show. I think there are hints to it here and there, but they really didn't spend too much time on it. The legend of Azor Ahai is shrouded in the mystery of time. He's said to be a legendary hero who wielded Lightbringer, a fiery sword forged in the heart of his beloved Nissa Nissa. 3 times he attempted to forge the blade, each time plunging it into a sacrifice he held dear. Only with his 3rd and final try, when he plunged it into his beloved Nissa Nissa, did he create Lightbringer, a weapon powerful enough to vanquish the darkness. So who is Azor Ahai Reborn? One prominent contender is Stannis Baratheon, Melisandre's champion. Truthfully, I don't know that his description matches the description of Azor Ahai too well, but Melisandre seems to think he's the one, and she's shown some pretty powerful magic. That said, the common expectation is that Jon Snow is Azor Ahai Reborn, with his Targaryen blood and connection both to ice and fire through the Starks and Targaryens, presenting a stronger claim. His resurrection from the dead could be interpreted as a rebirth, and his battle against the White Walkers aligns with the prophecy's purpose. Beyond those two, many point to Daenerys Targaryen, citing her dragons as the embodiment of Lightbringer and her role as a potential unifier against the darkness. And there might be some credibility to this, given that we know George R.R. Martin likes to subvert expectations. Right now everyone expects Azor Ahai to be a man. Daenerys Targaryen would subvert that. With that, let's dive down to level 2. Bran Stark, the Night King. Bran Stark, the seemingly gentle, 3-eyed raven, could be something more. The Night King, the embodiment of eternal winter and darkness. It's worth noting that at this point in the book, there is not a true Night King. There is not a true one big bad guy in the books, in the same way that the shows have one. So if Bran does become the Night King, there's a few more things that need to happen before that. Some fans interpret the sequence of Game of Thrones as a closed time loop, suggesting that Bran becomes trapped in the past, his consciousness permanently entwined with the Night King's. This would explain the Night King's seemingly intimate knowledge of Bran's abilities and his persistent targeting of him throughout the show. In this interpretation, Bran's passivity and detachment could be attributed to the internal struggle between his Stark humanity and the icy grip of the Night King's darkness. Others take a more metaphorical approach, They see the Night King as a dark reflection of Bran, representing the potential corruption of his power and the dangers of unchecked knowledge. The theory posits that Bran's prolonged exposure to the past and the horrors it holds could warp his perspective, potentially turning him into a cold, detached figure driven by a ruthless vision of order, not too dissimilar from the Night King. This interpretation resonates with Bran's transformation into the Three-Eyed Raven. He loses his emotional connection to the present, becoming increasingly absorbed in the grand tapestry of time. His actions, such as manipulating Hodar's fate and seemingly allowing the Night King to reach Winterfell, raise questions about his true motives and the choices he makes in the name of a seemingly inevitable future. The show concludes with Bran crowned king, leaving the Night King defeated. The ambiguity surrounding his true nature remains, though. Did he truly overcome the darkness, or is it merely dormant, waiting for an opportunity to reassert itself? We don't really know how the story ends yet, and I'm not entirely convinced that Bran will end up on the throne at the end of the book series, and we also don't know if there's going to be a true Night King in the book series either. That said, it's an interesting theory, to say the least. The fate of Stannis Baratheon. If you watched the shows, you'll notice that we never really got a true ending to Stannis' story. It seems like we did, but it was never really shown on camera. Ramsay Bolton claims to have killed him, but we don't really know. And there's always speculation that Stannis escaped. In Game of Thrones, we often see stories and plot lines repeat themselves throughout history. So one thread that I saw online was that Stannis actually escaped north of the Wall and became this era's reincarnation of the Night's King. To be clear, this is not the evil ice wizard, the Night King, but rather a deserter who escaped north of the Wall and continued his life with the wildlings. Others see a simpler truth. Stannis met his end at Winterfell, a tragic hero consumed by his own hubris and flawed sense of righteousness. His unwavering belief in his destiny, fueled by Melisandre's manipulations, and his own thirst for power ultimately led him to a pyre of his own making. Honestly, after what he did to his daughter, I'm pretty sure he deserves it. Ancient symbols. If you watch the series, there are two symbols that you might remember. The first I'd understand if you forgot, because I think it only showed up in the pilot, and the other we've seen a few times. The first was a circle with a line through it that we saw in the pilot episode made out of corpses, and the second was a spiraling circle that we often see associated with the children of the forest. So let's start with the spiral. This ubiquitous symbol adorns ancient ruins, circles wirewood trees, and even appears in other contexts, like the Night King's creation. Is it a representation of life's constant cycle, birth, death, and rebirth? Or does it hint at the cyclical nature of magic itself, the ebb and flow of power like changing seasons? Some see it as a symbol of harmony, the interconnectedness of all things, while others interpret it as a foreboding reminder of the other's cyclical return. One other theory I came across was that the spiral itself has 7 arms. Maybe it's 7 arms for 7 gods. Maybe it's connected to the new gods in some way, each arm representing one of those gods. We don't see much in Game of Thrones that connects the old and new gods, so this might be an interesting theory. But what about the others and their circle with a line through it symbol? This symbol appears in the icy landscapes. It's carved into white flesh, it's scribbled on walls. Does it represent their connection to the cold and death? Is it a mark of division, a cleaving of the world into the living and the frozen? Some see it as a symbol of the other's relentless nature and their detachment from the natural world. One theory that stuck out to me was that of a broken world. The broken circle could represent the other's view of the world, shattered by the arrival of men and their disruption of the natural order. Further, maybe this symbolizes the wall that divides the world. Truthfully, we don't know how large the Game of Thrones world really is. We've seen people sail off into the ocean, never to be seen again. What's to say that it doesn't extend just as far to the north? Interestingly, we often see the symbols from the Children of the Forest and the others side by side, indicating that maybe there really is some past relationship between the two. I guess we'll just have to wait for a few more books to come out. The Others' Motivations. From the frozen wastes beyond the wall, a chilling mystery creeps south. The motives of the Others, also known as the White Walkers. If you're basing this on the show, I'm not sure we ever really got a conclusion. We got Arya doing some fancy knife tricks, and then poof, no more White Walkers. So let's ignore that for a bit. One prominent theory paints the Others as vengeful spirits, driven by a primordial rage against mankind. Some believe that they are vengeful ghosts of the first men, massacred by the Children of the Forest during the Dawn Age. Others see them as embodiments of winter itself, a natural force seeking to reclaim the world from the warm-blooded usurpers. This interpretation posits their invasion as some sort of cosmic rebalancing. Another theory connects them to the Great Other, a sort of devil-evil opposite of the Lord of Light. This interpretation aligns their actions with a desire to plunge the world into eternal darkness, their icy touch representing the creeping tendrils of oblivion. In this reading, their motivations transcend mere vengeance or natural cycles, becoming a battle between light and darkness, good and evil. I'm not sure I totally buy this, as George R. R. Martin is famously known for writing morally gray characters, but maybe only the gods can be truly black and white? Some fans, however, propose a more complex and tragic backstory. They suggest the Others were originally peaceful creatures, corrupted by an ancient pact with the Children of the Forest. This interpretation sees their march on Westeros not as an act of aggression, but as a desperate attempt to restore balance, perhaps even seeking to purge mankind from a world that they have irrevocably corrupted. Ultimately, the Others remain a mystery. We didn't really get an answer from the show, and who knows when the next book is coming. Their purpose, whether driven by vengeance, cosmic duty, or even a tragic quest for redemption, is still open for interpretation. Let me know your theory in the comments. And with that, let's move down to level 3. Tommens Death. I remember this episode like it was yesterday. It was one of the few, maybe the only cold open that Game of Thrones ever did. The explosion at the Sept, orchestrated by Cersei, followed by the slow cut of Tommen removing his crown and walking out of his window, was some of the most intense television I had seen. That said, in the books, Tommen's fate, and really his entire arc, remains tantalizingly unwritten. In the show, Tommen's journey is one of crushing innocence and manipulation. A gentle, pious boy thrust onto the Iron Throne by his ruthless mother, Cersei Lannister, he becomes a pawn in the deadly game of power. Margaery Tyrell, seeking influence and power, ensnares him in marriage, only to be consumed by Cersei's wildfire plot. Broken and alone after the arrest and incarceration of Margaery, Tommen finds his solace in faith, seeking guidance from the High Sparrow. But even this sanctuary is shattered when Cersei orchestrates the Sept's destruction, leaving Tommen with nothing but despair. However, in the books, Tommen's story is at a vastly different place. He remains a mere child, sheltered and secluded by Cersei, away from the machinations of the court. While the seeds of his future marriage to Margaery are sown, their relationship hasn't blossomed into the toxic power struggle seen in the show. The High Sparrow's influence is limited, and the wildfire plot has yet to ignite the capital. The divergence leaves readers with a multitude of questions. Will Tommen ever truly rule? Will his piety and naivety be exploited by Cersei or others? Will he choose love over his mother's machinations? And most importantly, will he meet the same tragic end as his show counterpart? Several intriguing possibilities emerge. Some theorize that Tommen, under the High Sparrow's influence, may become a sort of puppet king, ruling in name only while the faith of the Seven wields true power. Others believe that Cersei's manipulation will eventually drive Tommen to rebellion or even to madness. I've read a few theories, but the most plausible one to me is that Tommen's death will mirror the events that happened to Bran, namely his fall from a window. Notably, Bran does not fall, but is pushed. I think the show began to meander a bit at this point, but even there, show watchers should remember the revenge that the family of Oberyn Martell wanted to exact on the Lannisters after his death. To me, one of the Sand Snakes seem like a prime suspect for the death of Tommen Lannister. Time travel. While Game of Thrones concluded without an overt confirmation of time travel, the series sprinkled enough subtle hints and narrative loops to ignite a passionate theory among fans. These theories, though unconfirmed, offer intriguing possibilities and shed light on the show's thematic depth. So let's look into the very confusing world of time travel theories in Game of Thrones and explore their potential implications. Bran Stark, marked by his fall and subsequent connection to the Three-Eyed Raven, stands at the heart of most time travel theories. His visions, spanning past and present, blur the lines of linear time, and his whispers in Hodar's ear, seemingly sent across years, fuel speculation. One theory suggests Bran, upon becoming the Three-Eyed Raven, becomes trapped in a time loop, doomed to relive the same events while subtly influencing them. The interpretation explains Hodar's tragic fate, and even hints at Bran manipulating key events through his whispers, shaping the future while seemingly bound by the past. Another theory posits Bran as a conscious time traveler, able to navigate the past and present at will. His cryptic pronouncements, his seemingly detached demeanor, and his pivotal role in key events like the Night King's defeat can be seen as evidence of his calculated manipulations. This would paint Bran as a powerful, yet morally ambiguous figure, playing a hidden game across time to ensure a specific outcome. Beyond Bran, the narrative itself offers hints of temporal anomalies. Daenerys' vision in the House of the Undying features glimpses of future events. It lends credence to the idea of non-linear time. The repetitive motif of the Wheel of Time and the prophetic dreams experienced by various characters further blur the lines, suggesting a cyclical nature to existence, where past and future bleed into each other. These narrative elements fuel theories of a closed time loop, where events preordain themselves and characters fulfill prophecies set in stone, highlighting the character's struggle against seemingly preordained fates. Personally, I'm drawn to the idea that Bran somehow becomes a completely neutral force. In the show, he's obviously fighting the Night King and the others, but what if as the story unfolds, we find that Bran is dipping into both sides of the battle? Maybe there is more to Bran being the Night King than we thought. The Faceless Men. The Faceless Men are some of the more theory-inspiring characters from the series. When I first encountered them in the books, it seemed to me like they were unstoppable, that someone could just pay them to assassinate the king if they wanted, albeit for an enormous amount of money. Hailing from Braavos, the Faceless Men worship the many-faced god, yet what is their ultimate goal? Are they merely tools, or does a deeper purpose hide beneath their veiled faces? One prominent theory paints the Faceless Men as meticulous balancers, ensuring the natural order remains undisturbed. This interpretation sees them as the embodiment of death, a necessary force that culls excesses and maintains equilibrium. Their assassinations, though seemingly random, are posited as calculated interventions, preventing individuals or events from disrupting the grand tapestry of fate. This might factor into their pricing model, as it seems to depend on both the size of the task as well as who's asking. Littlefinger mentions in an early book that hiring them to kill Daenerys would cost more than hiring an army. It also reflects their motto, Valar Morghulis, all men must die, and Valar Dohaeris, all men must serve. Other theories paint them more as killers with a conscience. Readers point to a story suggesting that in order for a lord to have the heir of another lord murdered, he would have to sacrifice his own heir. This one seems to make the most sense to me. Their origin is that of a slave uprising, so there seems to be some form of justice baked into their system. That said, this doesn't really get at their goal, Maybe they really are as neutral as they proclaim, and their only goal is the continued worship of the many-faced god, which they carry out through assassinations. Gods. Speaking of gods, let's go a little bit deeper. Gods and magic are some of the most interesting parts of Game of Thrones, and honestly, it probably deserves its own separate video. From the fiery pronouncements of Rohor, to the whispering heart-shries of the old gods, to the Faceless Men's worship of the many-faced god, which seems to incorporate all religions, we're left not knowing if any or all the religions and gods in Game of Thrones have any actual power. One prominent camp views the gods of Game of Thrones as mere tools used by men to explain the unexplainable and justify their actions. This interpretation sees the Lord of Light and his flames, as well as the whispers of the old gods, as manifestations of natural or psychological phenomena, misinterpreted and imbued with divine qualities. The power attributed to these deities, in this view, stems from the faith of their followers, not any inherent godly power. And while this might be the most probable, I do think it's the most boring option, so I'm hoping this isn't the way George decides to go. Another theory delves deeper into the realm of the mystical, proposing the existence of true sentient deities shaping the world from the shadows. The prophecies, miracles, and seemingly inexplicable events are seen as evidence of their influence, albeit indirect and often cryptic. This interpretation paints the gods as mysterious forces, their motivations and goals beyond human comprehension. Yet some fans suggest a more nuanced approach, blurring the lines between the two perspectives. They propose that the gods of Game of Thrones exist on a spectrum, with some embodying natural forces, like the Drowned God, while others, like the Lord of Light, possessing a degree of sentience and influence. This middle ground allows for both the existence of genuine divine power and the misinterpretation of natural phenomena as acts of God, creating a captivating and complex theological landscape. The show didn't really do Euron justice, but based on what we've seen in the books and some of the sneak peeks of future chapters, I'm expecting some absolutely crazy stuff from him in the future. I'm calling his character arc as the most disappointing adaptation from book to show, but let me know what you think in the comments. Regardless, I'm excited to see what kind of supernatural stuff Euron does in the future, as it seems to tie directly into the Drowned God and the Lord of Light. And with that, let's move down to level 4. Seasons. In the world of Game of Thrones, the seasons are not mere markers of time. They are poignant symbols in the show's narrative, mirroring the characters' journeys and highlighting the show's thematic core. From the embrace of winter to the fleeting warmth of summer, each season carries a distinct weight, shaping the world and reflecting the ever-shifting tides of Westeros. Winter, in Game of Thrones, represents more than just cold weather. It signifies death, stagnation, and the relentless march of oblivion. Beyond the physical dangers, it embodies the erosion of hope, the dwindling of resources, and the desperate struggle for survival that pushes characters to their limits. The White Walkers are obviously also tied to this season, though we don't really know why yet, other than them both obviously being cold. Really, what we don't know is, do the others bring winter, or does winter bring the others? That said, winter also carries within it the potential for rebirth. It forces introspection, reflection, and a harsh pruning of the old. The starkness of the landscape strips away superficialities, revealing the true nature of individuals and societies. For those who endure its harsh embrace, there's the possibility of a new beginning, a forging of resilience and strength that blossoms when spring finally arrives. Spring, in contrast, paints Westeros in hues of hope and renewal. It heralds the return of life, the melting of the icy grip of winter, and a surge of optimism as resources replenish and possibilities bloom. It's a time of alliances forged, plans hatched, and seeds planted, with characters finding new resolve and forging their paths in the warmth of returning days. Daenerys' meteoric rise, fueled by the promise of spring and the rebirth of dragons, exemplifies this season's potential for transformation and the blossoming of long-dormant dreams. However, spring's warmth can also breed deception and ambition. The renewed energy can mask festering tensions, leading to betrayal and conflict. Just as the first buds emerge, so too do hidden agendas and ruthless power struggles, reminding us that the potential for darkness lingers even within the season of light. Summer, the longest and seemingly idyllic season, becomes a symbol of stagnation and excess. The abundance of resources breeds complacency, with characters indulging in lavish feasts and revelry. Long nights turn into endless banquets, political maneuvering hides beneath a veil of superficiality, and the harsh realities of winter are conveniently forgotten. This complacency, however, fuels internal decay and weakens defenses, leaving Westeros vulnerable when the inevitable chill returns, bringing us into the fall. Now, fall isn't really talked about much from what I can find. It's more of a slow progression from summer to winter. That said, I think the series starts in the summer-ish season and quickly devolves into winter chaos. The Valenar. Cersei Lannister, the character we all love to hate, fueled by ambition and a prophecy that haunted her. The Valenar, the little brother in High Valyrian, who would bring about her downfall. This cryptic utterance cast a long shadow over her arc, shaping her decisions and fueling her paranoia. Yet, with the book series being behind the show's conclusion, we're left continuing to speculate about the prophecy's true meaning and eventual fulfillment. The obvious interpretation identifies Tyrion Lannister as the Valenar. It's the one we would expect. It's the one that Cersei expects. He's the youngest brother. It's obviously him, right? Cersei and Jaime are twins. It couldn't be Jaime, right? Well, I'm of the opinion that option 2 is the much more likely one. Instead of Tyrion, what if Jaime Lannister is the Valenar? Several points in the story point out that Cersei is technically older than Jaime, even if it's only by a few minutes. And instead of a brother that already despises her, it's her lover and brother that grows to despise her and eventually fulfills the prophecy. A third option is that it really embodies both Tyrion and Jaime. Should Tyrion continue down his path with Daenerys, it's very obvious that it could lead to Cersei's downfall, but I expect there to be a change in Jaime's demeanor as the final books come out, and I expect it will be substantially different than Jaime's final arc in the TV show. False Arya. Here's one that I truly had never thought of. What if Arya, fan favorite, isn't actually Arya anymore? What if she was killed and replaced with a faceless man of Braavos? This theory hinges on a few things, namely her very sudden change in behavior and skills. She goes from a grieving psychopath to a calm, collected killer in a very short period of time. This is obviously supposed to be the result of her training, but now I'm not too sure. The theory centers on Arya's seemingly diminished emotional range. The fiery Stark, known for her fierce loyalty and impulsive spirit, appears colder, more detached, almost mechanical in her actions. This shift, particularly pronounced after her return to Westeros, fuels the suggestion that a faceless man, trained to shed identity and emotion, now occupies her skin. The counter here is that it all happened very quickly in the show. I'm guessing the book will show us more of this development over time and over a much longer period of time. Another point of contention lies in Arya's combat abilities. While her initial training with the Faceless Man honed her fighting skills, her newfound mastery of swordsmanship, particularly her acrobatic techniques, seem beyond even her impressive talent. Some fans contend that only a seasoned Faceless Man, trained in mimicking others' combat styles, could explain such skill. Again, I'm going to attribute this to a time gap that couldn't be shown on the TV show, but we will probably see more of in the books. That said, Arya is one of my favorite characters, and if we ever see another book, I can't wait to see her arc unfold in Winds of Winter. Prequel Theory. A Song of Ice and Fire. We end up seeing Samwell Tarly pitching this story to a Maester publishing house. Hopefully he has more luck finishing the series than George. Jokes aside, Game of Thrones does have a very strong cyclical lore aspect to it, and we're left wondering if maybe, just maybe, it could be the prequel to a much larger, yet-to-be-told story, suggesting that Westeros might be just one chapter in a grand cyclical narrative, a stage where players rise and fall, empires crumble and rise again, and the echoes of past and future bleed into the present. One key argument for this theory lies in the cyclical nature of time hinted at in the show. The very idea of a story centered around summer and winter and the dichotomy of those two implies pretty heavily that even if they're able to fight off the others this time around, it's going to happen again in some other long period of time. The Night King's rise and fall mirror the long night of legend, suggesting a repeating pattern of conflict and destruction. The Children of the Forest creation of the White Walkers, driven by fear and misunderstanding, could be a consequence of past events yet to be revealed. All of these aspects just seem destined to play out again and again. Furthermore, the presence of seemingly supernatural forces like Bran's green-seeing abilities and Melisandre's fire magic hints at a larger cosmic framework beyond the mortal realm. This is very clearly magic in the story, but it all seems to be on the edges of society. We hear stories from earlier in the world's history of Old Valyria and events like the Doom, but we never get to see it. I'm sure we'll never see a book about it, but I wish I could see a Game of Thrones story with more explicit magic in it. Maybe I'm the only one. And with that, let's move down to the final level. Level 5. Others' Origins. The Others, their origins are shrouded in mystery and legend. The first book has old Nan scaring Bran with stories of these others that approach with the winter, and while the show offered glimpses of their creation, definitive answers are elusive, leaving the door open for intriguing theories. It's important to clarify here, the Others, or as the show called them, White Walkers, are the big bad guys, the ones in the shows that have spears and can raise the dead. The army that they raise are just called Whites, and they're basically just zombies. A dominant theory suggests that the Others were once first men, the early human inhabitants of Westeros. According to this interpretation, a faction of first men delved too deeply into forbidden ice magic, seeking immortality or power. This tampering with dark forces backfired, transforming them into the pale, inhuman Others, driven by a singular purpose: the eradication of all life. Evidence for this theory comes from the show's hints that the Others bear physical resemblance to the first men. Additionally, the Children of the Forest, who created the White Walkers in the show's lore, express fear and regret for their actions, suggesting that they may have corrupted something inherently human. It's worth noting here that just because it happened one way in the show doesn't mean that's the way it's going to happen in the books. Another popular theory proposes that the Others are an entirely separate species, predating both first men and the Children of the Forest, portraying them as more of an elemental force, creatures of ice and darkness driven by an innate primal urge to consume and extinguish life. We've talked about natural versus supernatural a lot in this video, so this isn't totally out of the question. Some fans delve even deeper, speculating that the Others might be tied to a larger cosmic force, potentially even avatars for some malevolent deity. The Great Other is usually the one mentioned. This interpretation draws on the show's portrayal of Melisandre and the Lord of Light, suggesting that the existence of opposing forces beyond the mortal realm exist. The Others, in this view, become the instruments of the Great Other, seeking to plunge Westeros into an eternal winter. Night King. So this one is a bit tricky, and it's possibly the largest divergence from the book, even more so than Euron. In the book, there is no Night King. There is no quote-unquote leader of the White Walkers, at least not yet. In the show, there is obviously the big bad guy that Arya kills with her funny little knife trick, and that's probably because the show just needed a bad guy. Before we get to the show's Night King, let me just mention one other point, that there is a character in the books referred to as the Night's King, who was a Lord Commander of the Night's Watch who went north of the Wall. He's also generally believed to have been a Stark. The show muddies this all up when they show the guy tied to the tree being turned into the Night King, but anyways. Another interpretation links the Night King to an ancient prophecy, particularly the legend of Azora Ahai, the prince that was promised, destined to combat darkness. Some fans argue that the Night King fulfills this prophecy in a twisted way, representing an embodiment of cold and darkness destined to be defeated by a true champion of light, potentially Daenerys Targaryen or Jon Snow. Others challenge the significance of the Night King. He's just a villain, nothing more, nothing less. He's not some sort of cosmic force or deity. I read this as the show's attempt to make George R.R. Martin's world a little less weird and a little more palatable for the masses. Personally, I think they stripped some of the fantastic elements out of the show just to make it more watchable. But what do you think about this one? Let me know below. Red magic. Of all of the magic systems in Game of Thrones, red magic somehow feels the most real to me. That is, it seems to have the most clear examples of actual magic happening, not just chance or acts of nature. Wielded by the red priests like Melisandre, the flames promise salvation and destruction. Some will argue that red magic is limited and relies on elaborate illusions and psychological manipulation rather than genuine magic. Visions and prophecies could be similar to how modern fortune tellers work, telling you a version of what you want or expect to hear. Basically, they're all con artists using their con artist skills to gain power. But that doesn't feel like a satisfying answer to me. We see quite a few examples of resurrection in both the shows and the book. Jon Snow and Beric Dondarrion are both resurrected by red priests. We also have Catelyn Stark in the books, resurrected by Beric, with the same magic. And then we have other characters like Benjen Stark, who has been resurrected in some other way that we don't really know about. We also see examples of red priests performing otherworldly feats and having incredible premonitions, like Moqorro with Euron. I'm not sure what the answer will end up being, but it's interesting that while some faiths don't seem to have very tangible effects, like the Starks and the Old Gods, others seem to have very visible effects. Magic and religion seem to be tied in a very tight knot in A Song of Ice and Fire, and I, for one, can't wait to see how George R.R. Martin unties it, though half of me thinks he'll leave it as a mystery even at the very end. Sir Jaren Lannister. Here's another one that I didn't remember reading about. Sir Jaren Lannister, the uncle of Tyrion, Jaime, and Cersei. He vanished on a quest for the lost Valyrian sword Brightroar, and his fate has become the area for some speculation. The most straightforward theory is that Jaren was a victim of his own ambition, venturing into the ruins of Valyria, a notoriously dangerous wasteland plagued by earthquakes and demons. He likely met his demise there. This conclusion aligns with Tywin's pronouncements of Jaren being lost, and the general perception of Valyria as a cursed and uninhabitable place. However, this simplicity feels unsatisfying, so what if something a little more interesting happened? Enter Euron Greyjoy, the only character we know of that claims to have gone to Valyria and made it out alive. His sudden rise to power coincides with Jaren's disappearance, and his possession of Valyrian steel armor fuels speculation about a deadly encounter and plundered loot. This theory adds a layer of intrigue, suggesting Jaren might have fallen victim to Euron's cunning and thirst for power. Euron's sudden possession of Valyrian steel armor, specifically a breastplate, strengthens the suspicion of foul play. Did he plunder this prized possession from Jaren's corpse after a deadly encounter in Valyria? Could he have even lured Jaren there on false pretenses, promising knowledge of Brightroar's location in exchange for meeting on neutral ground? Overall, He's not really a very important character to the plot that we know of, but I'll spare any moment of time I get to learn more about Valyria and what happened there. And that does it. You made it to the end of the iceberg. It was admittedly a little bit of a shorter one, but maybe in the future there'll be additional Game of Thrones icebergs that I can cover. Do you have a favorite fan theory or mystery or piece of lore that's missing here? Let me know in the comments and I'll add it to the list to explore at a later date. Lastly, if you made it this far, please consider subscribing, clicking that notification bell. It means a lot to me and it'll bring you more videos just like this. Let me know in the comments if there's some other area of lore you want me to explore and I'll add it to the list. And with that, thanks and I'll see you next time.